What's going on, everyone? I'm the Intel, and today we're diving into the amazing and incredible world of Dead Rising. We're going to be ranking every game in the series from worst to best on a tier list. I know, massive surprise for this channel, I've never done anything quite like it before, but with the recent announcement of a Dead Rising 1 remake, or is it a remaster? Who knows, it kind of looks like a remake. I'm gonna call it a remake. It looks like a remake to me. I love this franchise so much. I've actually wanted to make this video a couple times in the past. Like, I remember last year I wanted to make this video, but there's just no real reason. I was like, nobody cares about Dead Rising anymore. It's a dead franchise, but Capcom surprises us and brings out a remake, so I want to make a tier list on this game because I love this franchise. I've spent countless hundreds of hours across all the entries, well, most of the entries, not all of them. We're going to be ranking every Dead Rising game from Dead Rising 1 all the way up to 4, and that includes Case Zero and Case West and Off the Record, so quite a bit of games to get through, so let's not waste any more time, and let's get started. Starting with the amazing, the original, the one that kicked it all off, Dead Rising 1, I guess. I guess a better name would be Dead Rising 2006, since we're getting a remake now. Then again, it's called Deluxe Remaster. Regardless, we're not talking about that. So, Dead Rising 1, I don't know what there else is to say. This game is, I think it's honestly, maybe controversially, I think it's one of the best games ever made. It might be nostalgia talking, but I love Dead Rising 1 so much. I can replay Dead Rising 1 and another one of these games that we will come to later. Don't want to spoil anything. It's amazing, you know what I mean? I love just the timer, the kind of pressure it puts you on, the survivors, even with their dumb AI, I still love them. The psychopaths, I think, are so creative and so unique. I like all of the psychopaths, to be honest. You know, I think the only one I dislike is kind of Cletus. I think his boss fight's just a little janky. It's, you know, I didn't really like it very much, but every psychopath outside of that I love. You know, I mean, the convicts, when you first walk in that park and you hear that music, oh my god, that might be like the best moment ever. Like, in a game, it's so terrifying. You know, Frank's an amazing character, like his iconic lines.
I've covered wars, you know.
Like, how can you not love that guy? You know what I mean? You know, the fact you can just look around that mall and almost anything you can see that you could pick up in like real life, you can pick up in the game, and I just love that. You know, anything, just pick it up, pick up a bench, hit someone with it. You want to pick up, I don't know, a Mega Man blaster you see on a shelf, like a toy, and just start shooting things with it. I love it. So I don't want to spend too much more time on Dead Rising 1 because, well, I think it's the game everyone loves. Everyone kind of loves Dead Rising 1. I love the psychopaths. I love the gameplay. I think the story's actually really cool. I don't think the story gets enough praise. I think it's actually kind of cool and try something different and a bit unique. I just love everything about this game, you know what I mean? If I had to pick the things I dislike, I guess the special forces are kind of annoying. They're fun the first playthrough, and then every other playthrough after that I find them kind of annoying. Especially the goddamn little helicopters. Cletus boss fight's kind of boring. The graphics are kind of meh, I guess, but that's about to be fixed with a remake, remaster thing. So I think you can guess where Dead Rising 1 is going in S tier. Like I said, I don't want to spend too much time here because I think we all knew where this one was going. Now next, something you might not have been expecting, and that is Dead Rising. Again, Dead Rising Chop Till You Drop, the Wii port. I've actually played a good chunk of the game. I've never actually finished it, but I've played most of the game, and I wanted to include it because I think it's a game that surprisingly doesn't get enough attention. I'm not saying praise, I'm going to say attention because I don't know if praise is the right word. I think Chop Till You Drop, the Wii port, if you don't know, is Dead Rising used a brand new engine called MT Framework. It kind of pushed the Xbox 360 almost to its limits, and that was almost, came out the year after the 360, so that's really impressive. Capcom wanted to port it to the Wii. That wasn't going to happen. The engine just simply couldn't work on the Wii. So what they did is they took Resident Evil 4, which got a Wii version, and they kind of made that engine work all good for the Wii and had all the cool Wii motion controls and stuff. And they basically just took Dead Rising and thrown it into the Resident Evil 4 engine. A really interesting, almost kind of alternate reality take on the original. It's more gun focused. You can only hold one melee weapon at a time, but you can hold like 4 guns and like swap between them on like a weapon wheel. There's like an inventory. Cletus, that guy I don't like, the psychopath, he doesn't die at the end. He actually becomes a merchant and sells you guns and ammo, and it's just really weird. There's like a new like guy who kind of helps Otis and can kind of take you to the gun shop and stuff to buy stuff. There's like zombie poodles and zombie parrots who will drop grenades on you. This game's really weird. Is it worth playing? Honestly, no, not really. After like a couple hours of playing it, I think the kind of charm kind of wears off of like, oh my god, it's Dead Rising, but in a different engine and different gameplay design and different world. Well, not different world, it's just the same world, but smaller, and kind of, they add like tons of roadblocks.
There's roadblocks.
To like make you take the long way around, so it feels bigger than it actually is, but it's genuinely tiny. They've also like got rid of a lot of stuff, like the on-screen zombies are drastically down. They show like a maximum of like 10 zombies at once. There's technically more of them, but they're all invisible. So you can see like a maximum of like 5, maybe 10 at once if you're very, very lucky. It uses pre-rendered cutscenes from the 360 version. They got rid of the photography system, and you know, using motion controls, honestly, I don't really enjoy it, and it's all gun focused, and there's not really sandbox or anything. There's no timer. It's all mission based, and that's kind of all the major things to kind of run through with it. And honestly, I did try and sit down and play through it. I like whipped out, I'd like go dig out the Wii and everything and tried to play it, and I bought a copy of the game and I tried to play it, but honestly I got about maybe 4 hours in and I just kind of stopped because it's just Dead Rising 1 but Resident Evil 4. It kind of almost feels like a mod for Resident Evil 4. It's like someone modded Resident Evil 4 to turn into Dead Rising. It's not the best thing you'll ever play, but like it's more of a fun thing to play, like to see Dead Rising in like a different style, in a different way. But other than that, I don't really think Chop 2 Drop's really worth playing, which is why I'm going to put it in C tier. Maybe a little low for some people, but if you've played the 360 version first and then played the Wii version, I don't think you're really going to get much enjoyment outside of like, look at this game, it's different, but it's the same game I know, but it's different. Moving away from Dead Rising 1 and into Dead Rising 2 Case Zero, the kind of prequel demo thing for Dead Rising 2. Well, it's paid. It costs $5 or £4 Great British pounds. It's an okay pricing considering the game is what, like 2 hours long. Well, you can do more than that and explore everything, but probably most people spend like 2 or 3 hours maybe. To be fair, it's pretty interesting. If you don't know, it's got its own map. It's called Still Creek. It's a small little town. It's honestly not very memorable. It was fun to kind of play Dead Rising 2 before the game came out, but there's not much to this game, to be honest. The story is very bare bones. It's, oh, find Zombrix for Katie, build a bike and drive away. That's pretty much it. Yeah, there's just not much more to say. Dead Rising 2 Case Zero, it's the exact same gameplay as Dead Rising 2. It's just, I don't really see much reason to come back to this game. I've been replaying Dead Rising 2 before the remake remaster of Dead Rising 1 comes out. I wanted to play Dead Rising 2 instead because I didn't want to play Dead Rising 1. I wanted to save myself for kind of the remake in September. So that's what I'm doing. I'm playing through Dead Rising 2 and I'm currently on Off the Record, and Case Zero, I replayed it. Did not enjoy it. I remember enjoying it a lot when it came out, but I think it's just something where it just kind of feels like busy work almost. You're just kind of building a bike and that's pretty much just walking around the town and trying to find the parts or get the money to buy it or whatever. It just doesn't really feel like there's any reason to ever replay Case Zero unless you're feeling a little nostalgic or you've never played it before. Then yeah, I think it's fine to go back to, but otherwise I probably am not going to go back to Case Zero at least for another couple of years because there's just nothing of real enjoyment here. Again, the game just kind of feels like busy work. Nothing really happens. If you don't play it before Dead Rising 2, nothing changes. It's the exact same game pretty much because it doesn't really add anything to Dead Rising 2's story. It's just kind of a little bit of background story. And one final note is the game is not available on Xbox One for a remaster or Series XS for a remaster. It's not available at all on any PlayStation console, and it's not available on PC at all. So it'd be kind of cool if we do eventually get a Dead Rising 2 Deluxe Remaster. Hopefully Capcom will port Case Zero to modern platforms, because right now you can only play it through Xbox One and Series XS's backwards compatibility or on a 360, which is not ideal. Anyway, I'm going to place Case Zero at a C tier. I don't think it's very fun. I think it's very limited in what you can do in the game. I think it's pretty short, which is obviously the point of the game, don't get me wrong, but I just kind of feel like it's busy work. It just kind of feels like I'm doing a bunch of side missions and nothing's really happening in the game. But that's just my opinion. Moving on to the main course, Dead Rising 2. Taking everything great about the original and cranking it up to 11. Dead Rising 2, in my opinion, is a zombie slaying masterpiece. It expands on the original's formula with what feels like a larger environment, but I'm actually not sure if Fortune City is bigger than Willamette. I'm genuinely not sure. It feels larger, but I'm also like, I don't know if it actually is. Anyway, I think Fortune City is a really fun map. I kind of like the whole casino, Las Vegas kind of vibe of it. I don't know what it is, but I just really like it. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool way to kind of do the mall stuff, kind of like the Royal Flush and Palisades, kind of being your kind of shopping kind of mall places and kind of having all this casino stuff elsewhere. I think it was a cool way of kind of innovating from the mall concept without, you know, just doing another mall again. I think it made the Survivor AI a little bit better, not amazingly better, but it's better. That's what matters. Combo weapons, I liked. I think in Dead Rising 2, they struck a good balance between realism of, oh yeah, you can make the nail bat or the knife gloves or whatever, you can make that. And, oh, the laser sword. You know what I mean? They struck a good balance. Most of the combo weapons feel like realistic enough. They're like, okay, that's not too out there. That's still grounded enough in this kind of Dead Rising reality. Later games would not follow that rule. we'll come to that. And just co-op. Who doesn't love co-op, I guess? You know what I mean? You can play the game with a friend or you can play it solo. I usually play solo, but it's fun to play with a friend sometimes. Terror is Reality multiplayer mode does not get enough love. I genuinely really enjoy the Terror is Reality multiplayer mode. I think it's really good and well made, so if you haven't played it, go check it out. It's basically just a bunch of mini games. You just kind of play some mini games and kill zombies in some fun creative ways. It's pretty fun. I think Chuck Green is a really good character. I think him being a father and having Katie and the Zombrex angle, I all think was actually really, really cool. I think the story in general is really cool from, I think it was kind of interesting how instead of you being the journalist, you had the journalist being a NPC, being Rebecca. I think that was a really interesting kind of spin on the original game's story. Having Chuck being, the motocross driver, the guy being accused, I think that was kind of interesting. I think the twist at the very end of the game, I won't spoil it, but one character kind of makes a big bad moment, does a big bad at the end. That was really cool. I think the story in general is pretty fun. I think the military, their entrance cutscene, and then the gas zombies, I think that's really, really cool. Though the gas zombies got boring really, really quick because there's so many of them and they're so annoying. Regardless, I really enjoyed the military thing. That cutscene when they first come in, I think is so goddamn cool. One of the best in the series in cutscenes term, in my opinion. Yeah, I think we can tell. Dead Rising 2, I love this game. This was my first Dead Rising game. I started with Dead Rising 2 and then I went back to Dead Rising 1 and 3 and 4 and that weren't out by that point. But I loved Dead Rising 2, so might be a little bit nostalgia driven and biased, but I don't care. Dead Rising 2 is a S tier game, and in my opinion, it stands toe to toe with Dead Rising 1 as the two titans of this series. Moving on to our next Dead Rising 2 entry, Dead Rising 2 Case West. Chuck and Frank in the same game. What else do you want? So Capcom finally gave what the people were wanting and combined a game where you had Chuck Green and Frank West killing zombies. This should be the best game ever made, which is what I'd be saying if it was a full game. Unfortunately, this was an Xbox Live Arcade game, kind of like Case Zero. It was released exclusively on the Xbox consoles, well, Xbox 360, but is backwards compatible on Xbox One and Series XS and not available on PlayStation or PC. Still, please remaster these games, Capcom. Anyway, this is a damn good game, but the problem is again, it was a smaller budget, it was a cheaper game, you can kind of clearly tell it had a smaller scope, and I think this game could have been really cool if it was just made on a bigger budget and with a bigger scope, you know what I mean? Like a game where it was a full-on Chuck and Frank adventure, you know what I mean? I can understand it's kind of a bit difficult to figure out another reason for Chuck to be in a zombie apocalypse. I get it, it's kind of difficult, but I think Chuck and Frank just back to back, killing some zombies would have been a damn cool game, and Case West is a damn good game. It is technically a sequel to Dead Rising 2 if you do ending A, which is if you don't give the bad guy Zombrex at the end. If you don't give him that, you get ending A. This follows on. Case West picks up directly after that ending, so you can kind of get a bit of a cool, different kind of continuation to the game. I think the setting's really bad though. It's set in a Phenotrans facility. It's basically just looks like a factory. Really boring setting. I really don't like exploring this place. It's very co-op focused. You can play solo with an AI controlled Frank, but you can feel the game was designed to be played with two players. It brought back the photography system, so that was kind of cool since, it gave Chuck a reason to have a camera, since, you're a journalist man, Mr. West. It was shorter than, obviously, Dead Rising 2. I think it's a little bit longer than Case Zero. It expanded the wider lore of the series, revealing more about Phenotrans and stuff, which was kind of cool. There's unique weapons and clothing options that were not available in Dead Rising 2, and that's kind of about it. There's not much more to say than it's basically Frank and Chuck in a factory killing zombies. That's about it. That's pretty much the whole game. And honestly, I'm going to put it in B tier. I don't have much more to say. It's a B tier game. It's better than Case Zero by, I think, a good bit, because, I don't know, Chuck and Frank makes it an immediate tier higher. But I think it's just more fun to play through Case West than there is Case Zero. It feels a bit more like the story actually has meaning, where Case Zero feels like the story had no meaning. Our next game it's Dead Rising 2 again. Yeah, once again, it's Dead Rising 2, but this time it's Dead Rising 2 Off the Record, our final Dead Rising 2 entry on this list, where it's an alternate reality, non-canon reimagining of Dead Rising 2, where instead of Chuck Green as the protagonist, it's Frank West. It's cool. It's cool. It added, you know, new areas to Fortune City, mainly just Uranus Zone. I know, haha, funny. It added sandbox mode. If you don't like the time limits, you can kind of go through sandbox mode and kind of mess around in that, which was pretty fun. It brought back the photography system, which was pretty cool. Got more advanced in Case West though. There's new combo weapons, there's some new psychopath encounters, and some of the existing psychopaths got kind of remixed, which I thought was kind of fun to be kind of different and change them up a little bit. The story got changed and kind of remixed. The characters had different motivations, and some of them were still good and some of the other ones turned bad, and different characters died, which I thought was kind of cool that they changed all that up. When we come to the placement of this game, I thought it was kind of difficult to rate because it is just Dead Rising 2 DLC pretty much, but they released it as a full standalone game. It's its own game, but it is pretty much just an expansion pack for Dead Rising 2. I am going to put it in A tier because I just think it is just Dead Rising 2, but off the record. And is off the record worse than Dead Rising 2? Not really, but it is just the same game again, so I can't really put it in S tier. I don't think it'd be very fair to put this game in S tier when it is Dead Rising 2 with Frank West, and that's pretty much it. Obviously, like I say, there is other changes, but the big part is it's just with Frank West instead of Chuck. So I'm going to put it in A tier just because it didn't really need to be its own standalone game. This could have been an expansion pack or DLC, but regardless, A tier for this game. Our next entry is not a Dead Rising 2 spin-off, prequel, sequel. It's Dead Rising 3. We're finally out of the Dead Rising 2 mines of its 101 spin-offs and prequels and expansions and whatever. Dead Rising 3 is an interesting game for me. It's the reason I wanted an Xbox One back in 2013 over the PlayStation 4 was because, well, Dead Rising 3. I love Dead Rising, so gotta get the new one on the new console, which was only on Xbox, and still to this day it's only on Xbox and not on PlayStation, which kind of sucks. Dead Rising 3, it's kind of seen as, for a lot of people, it's kind of seen as the beginning of the end for Dead Rising. Is it made a lot of controversial changes. Do I agree? Kind of. Kind of. I'll go into what I didn't like with Dead Rising 3, and first off, that's the world. I just did not like how big Los Perdidos was. It is a massive open world, and that's fine, because it's different. But then after about like half an hour in it, I just kind of realized I'm not crazy about this, because the reason I like Dead Rising 1 and 2 so much is not because of the size of the world, it's because of how dense it is. In Dead Rising 1 and 2, you can look at a shop or a casino or a building and you can just go over to it and walk inside and see what's in there. You might find a new combo blueprint, you might find some new clothes, just a fun weapon, a new weapon that you've maybe never seen before, or a weapon you're needing right now because you're low on weapons or whatever. It was always so good because you always found something new in these buildings, because you could pretty much, not every shop, I'm not going to say everything, but pretty much any shop or anything you could go into. Whereas Dead Rising 3, the city kind of feels like a backdrop. You can go in a lot of buildings, pretty decent amount actually for an open world title on the scale that Dead Rising 3 is. It wasn't the world I wanted in Dead Rising 3. The world I wanted in Dead Rising 3 was another Willamette or another Fortune City, where small, dense environment with so much to do. Whereas Dead Rising 3, I just didn't really enjoy exploring Los Perdidos. I also think the time management was pretty much nothing in this game. The game gives you 7 full days to do this main storyline, and you can pretty much do it at your own pace, take as long as you want, because there's no pressure at all in this game. I just never felt pressured by the time limit like I do in 1 and 2, which is one of the reasons I love Dead Rising so much, so that was a big downgrade in my opinion. I think the combo weapon system was kind of like I said in 2, I like Dead Rising 2's combos because it felt realistic enough, like nails in a bat, knives on the glove, or the tenderizers with the nails in the MMA gloves. It felt realistic enough. Now, the laser sword was kind of an exception, and some other combos as well, but mostly felt realistic enough, which I liked. It felt like Chuck was just taking 2 things and slapping them together. Dead Rising 3 does not feel like that. For example, there's an elemental staff that shoots ice, electricity, and fire. Yeah. And then you can do combo vehicles, like you can take a motorcycle and a steamroller and combine it and you can drive that around, and yeah, whereas Chuck would take like 2 chainsaws and slap it onto a motorbike, and that felt realistic. It just felt like he was like duct taping it and driving. That was it. Whereas Nick can somehow just put a steamroller into a motorbike and like does it in like 10 seconds. You know what I mean? It's something where it just felt like they went too far off the deep end with the combos. They instead went from, oh, can we make this in real life? Is this something realistic? To let's just do anything. And I kind of didn't like that change. I think leveling was also a big downgrade. Instead, when you level up, you get a skill point and you can level up however you want, from healing, inventory, whatever you wanted. I didn't like this. I like in Dead Rising 1 and 2, every time you level up, it was something random. You didn't know what level you're going to get. Whereas in Dead Rising 3, it's like, okay, I can just get all the levels and all the skills I want. So by like 10 levels in, you've probably got most of the stuff you want and you're feeling pretty strong, because leveling's really quick in this game for some reason. I think the psychos were pretty forgettable. I think the only psycho I liked was the monk guy. The rest were just kind of boring, didn't really enjoy them. The art style took a very, very dark turn for some reason. I like Dead Rising 1 and 2 because of how colorful they are. You know, they're extremely colorful games for being a zombie apocalypse. But Dead Rising 3 just feels like an episode of The Walking Dead. I mean, I like The Walking Dead, but I don't think Dead Rising should have changed its art style to that. What I did like, though, is I like the story. I actually think the story was pretty decent, and I think the actual gameplay feels amazing. You know, driving around does feel good. I think actually just beating up some zombies feels amazing. The visuals are a massive upgrade over 1 and 2. I think the zombie count is also extremely impressive for the Xbox One. It's, wow, crazy what it could do. But, and again, the combat in general just feels nice. It just feels good to beat zombies up. It feels good to shoot. The gunplay was so good. It felt really good to shoot things in this game. Much better than 1 and 2. It felt real, like really impactful compared to 1 and 2. But that's kind of where I leave Dead Rising 3. I think Dead Rising 3 is not a great, I think it's a very meh Dead Rising game, but a genuinely good game. I think it's a good zombie game, but it's just not a good Dead Rising, if you get what I mean. Which is why I'm going to put it in B tier, because I don't think it's a terrible game. I don't think it is. I'm not saying that the C tier games are bad, but what I'm saying is I don't think Dead Rising 3 just is a great Dead Rising, but I do think it's a fine game. Like, I don't think it's a game if you buy it and play it, you're going to have a bad time. I think you're going to buy it, play it, and have a fun time, because it is a fun game. It's just, if you're buying it expecting Dead Rising 3, you're not really getting Dead Rising 3. You're just kind of getting some like weird kind of generic zombie game, and that's kind of upsetting, but I don't think it's bad, so I'll put it in B. And finally, Dead Rising 4. Yeah, Dead Rising 4. And Frank West is back. No, he's not. They basically took Frank, well, his name, they took Frank's name, and that was about it. This is not Frank. This is Hank East. Yeah, this is it's a game that I don't quite understand what they were going with. With Dead Rising 3, one of the most vocal points about the game that people were like, hey, we don't really like this, is we don't really like that you're going in a kind of super different direction in Dead Rising 1 and 2. It'd be kind of cool if you maybe reined it in a little bit more, maybe kind of add back some of the more classic features. They did not. They went even further off the deep end. They completely removed the time limit. Instead, you have no time limit for the base game, and then Overtime Mode, which is a paid DLC called Frank Rising, has the timer. That went over as well, as you can imagine. They actually did introduce something called exosuits. Yeah, they're a little dumb, but I actually had kind of a lot of fun with it. Like, yeah, they're stupid, they're dumb, they don't make any sense, but they were kind of really fun, I won't lie. Psychopaths were changed to maniacs. Basically, there isn't psychopaths at all in this game. They're called maniacs, and the maniacs are basically just, we took a random NPC, gave them a weapon, and we were calling them a quote-unquote maniac. They aren't psychopaths. The inventory system from every other Dead Rising game was completely removed. Instead, we now have a slot for your melee weapon, a throwing weapon, a gun, and like you press down the D-pad, I think, for healing items. This was a terrible change. It was like, I don't understand it. It just feels like they were like, oh, the inventory system in Dead Rising 1, 2, and 3 is too complex. Let's make it so simple, because I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen anyone complain the inventory system in Dead Rising 1, 2, and 3 is way too hard to completely reinvent the inventory with this terrible system, because it means you can hold tons of weapons and tons of throwing weapons and tons of guns and also tons of healing. You never have to worry about how much you're carrying anymore because you have so many slots, because each slot has a separate counter for how much you can carry, so you can just have as much as you want. And then also, on top of that, you can't throw your melee weapon anymore. You can only throw the weapons the game wants you to throw, which is just not fun. Another actual positive of Dead Rising 4 is I actually like the expanded photography systems with the investigation mode. It's nothing crazy, it's not like you're playing a Sherlock Holmes game or something. I do think it's actually kind of fun. I like having scan the fingerprints and kind of investigate around a crime scene, where it kind of feels like I'm actually a journalist, I'm actually investigating. I thought this was actually kind of cool. Co-op is kind of back, but instead of co-op in the single player, there is a separate multiplayer mode. I guess the main story was way too good to share, I guess. You know, they wanted everyone to experience the thrilling narrative of Dead Rising 4 by themselves. This story in this game is dreadful. I don't even need to touch on the story, because I think you can play the first 10 minutes and kind of get the vibe of how poor that story is. The characters have terrible writing, the game makes terrible jokes. The Christmas theme, honestly kind of cool. I'll give the Christmas theme points. I think it's actually kind of cool. And that's kind of all I got for Dead Rising 4. I don't think I need to spend any longer talking about why Dead Rising 4 is a bad game. There's multiple videos on YouTube that are hours long that dive into why Dead Rising 4 is just such a bad game. It's not even a game where, like, Dead Rising 3 was like, I don't think it's a great Dead Rising game, but at least I think it's a good game. It's just not a good game to be called Dead Rising 3. If it was called, I don't know, Zombie Slayer 5000, I think I would have enjoyed it more, because I wouldn't have been comparing it to Dead Rising. Whereas Dead Rising 4 isn't a good zombie game, and it isn't a good Dead Rising. It's just not a good game in general. So I'm going to give it the lowest ranking on this tier list, and that is a D tier. It's not good. I don't have anything redeemable to say about it. You know what I mean? I kind of had to like dig far to find the exosuits photography system and Christmas theme. Those are literally the only 3 things I could find that I actually like in this game. It's just not a good game at all. It's not worth your time or your money. Even on sale, it's not even worth your money. Like, the game goes super cheap, but it's still not worth your money. You know, if you want to punish yourself for a couple hours, I guess you could buy it and have a couple hours of punishment. And there you have it, folks. A journey through the Dead Rising series, from its mall-crawling origins to, well, whatever Dead Rising 4 was. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It went a little bit longer than I expected, but I hope you've enjoyed this video. In the comments below, feel free to drop your own kind of tier list of the Dead Rising games. Kind of curious to see how many people agree. I do think some people might enjoy Dead Rising 3 more than I did. I just wasn't so hot on the game, but I know a lot of people do enjoy Dead Rising 3, so I'm kind of curious to see that. And I'm kind of curious to see if anyone likes Dead Rising 4 enough to put it higher than a D tier, because I can't imagine anyone does. But again, if you like the game, you like the game. Anyway, this has been my tier list, and that is the video. I've been the Intel, and I hope you have a lovely day.